We go. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Traumaplicity podcast with your host, Dr. Amanda Helman, author, cognitive release coach, and speaker. I'm so glad to have all of you tuning in today. We have our podcast weekly, and I bring on different people who have trauma in different areas of their life and how they overcame it. And sometimes we have some amazing, incredible guests, just like I'll be sharing tonight, Tiffany, who also write or speak about what happened to them and are able to empower other people, including you who are listening. And so traumaplicity, you might say, well, what is that? Well, it's trauma plus simplicity for traumaplicity. And we know that trauma can be quite complex. It can be complicated. But when our brain hears simple, it makes us say, yes, I can take one simple step forward, one simple step to heal. And that is how we move forward with traumaplicity. With that said, I'm so excited to interview Tiffany Brearton, and she has recently wrote her story. And her story, if you want to put that up, Tiffany, just so I make sure that you can see it one extra time, is From Stillettos to Grace, and it's available on Amazon. And I'm so excited that she's on here to talk about her story. And I had the honor of endorsing her book as well as many other people to share about her and what she's written that will help many people. And Tiffany is an author, she's a mom, she's a wife, and she also does some speaking. And so you want to tune in to hear all about Tiffany's. Tiffany, it's great to have you.
Hi, Amanda. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. I love your title. It's just keeping it simple. So I was super encouraged to hear that. That was amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, I feel like that was a download. It was actually, I asked somebody and they said complex, traumaplicity. And then when I was writing, it ended up being traumaplicity. And I thought that was funny because that's exactly what it's supposed to be. So Tiffany, I'd love for you to share your story and how you really got from your trauma to writing your book.
Yeah, so you'll hear in a little bit Amanda was part of this story too. But at a young age as a child, I was sexually abused. And it was before I had language to really know what was happening to my body. It was very confusing, and I just didn't have the words for it at the time. So I told no one until I was an adult. But in the meantime, I was reacting from the trauma, but didn't know what was going on. I was suicidal. I was leaving suicide notes everywhere. I was bulimic. I was anorexic. I was cutting up my arm. I was crying out for help and didn't know what really the problem was, because, I didn't understand that there was a root to everything that was occurring to me. So at the age of 18, as still a virgin, I became a stripper. And that is really where I experienced what I thought was the real world for the first time, and my sexuality. So I really got a weird, jaded look, if you will, at what sexuality was supposed to look like. As I was going in for an interview that day, I remember walking past the lap dance area and just my mind being blown and my jaw dropping, like never had seen anything like that in my life. And am I going to have to do that? I asked, my manager, and he was like, giggled because, here I am applying for a job to be a stripper and wondering if I was going to have to give a lap dance. So, of course, that was part of my journey. And, but it was just such a confusing time in a weird way to learn this world. And a lot of things needed to be healed coming out of that. So, in that environment, I really relied on a bouncer who his job was to keep me safe. So I really cling to that relationship, looking for just any type of safety I could get. And his job was just overlooking the lap dance area, which was a really scary thing for me to do. So made a friend out of this man, and as I was 18 and he was 34, he really took advantage of the situation. And after a couple of times out, I ended up losing my virginity to rape to him. So I just really went on a downward spiral at that point. I knew God, but I didn't really have a relationship with him. And I would have considered myself at that time an atheist. So fast forward, married this man because I had always said the first person I had sex with I was going to marry. So did marry him, had a child, and that child was just an answer to prayer that I didn't even pray. And she really just woke me up and made me become an adult and make decisions not only for me, but it was more about her now. So I got out of that toxic relationship and became her mom. And in that, um, really just yearning still for the perfect family. You know, everyone kind of grows up, well, not everyone, but most people grows up wanting mom, dad, and then children. And so here I had a child, but there was always like a missing piece. So I was really like striving for that still. So I, of course, found some men who were interested, and just began a cycle of toxic relationship after toxic relationship until I realized this was a terrible cycle that I was stuck in, and I needed to be single and focus on my daughter. So about a year later, I found um, a wonderful man who I ended up marrying, and life looked like it was going to be great. And my fairy tale was coming true, if you will. And shortly after, he was diagnosed with leukemia. And then shortly after that, he had passed away. So again, you know, just in this state of like, you know, what's going on, even feeling cursed, you know. But thankfully, the Lord had, right before that happened, we had became in relationship. And um, so I was left so broken, but I wasn't left without hope, because I had like a crash course, if you will, of leaning on the Lord for my only source of hope, because everything was so dark around me. I couldn't hardly lean on anyone else because it was too much for anyone to handle. So a few years went by, found a wonderful man that we married a few years after my husband had passed, and began having children, which sounds amazing. And it was an answer to so many prayers, because I thought those dreams died. But my trauma from the past began to surface, and it just couldn't be pushed down anymore. So here I am now. But it was a long journey to healing, and some of the things that I had to walk through when the trauma came up and I couldn't push it down anymore was talk therapy and EMDR and deliverance retreats and all the things, prayer after prayer after prayer, groups, you know, all the things. And I wish I could say it was this quick miracle and fix, but God's grace is so good, and he is so faithful just to give us, little piece by piece so we can keep going on and really find that true lasting healing, so we can walk free as he intended us to do. So that was a lot.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story, Tiffany, and just the different parts of childhood that you shared, the different abuse, sexual abuse, and later being confused about some of that, and then going in, as you talked about, like learning how to be a stripper, and then having these different abuses and toxic relationships where you were learning different things and you didn't really know how to get out of that. And you had some sad parts, right? You had your baby, then you had your marriage, and then your husband dying, and then having that redemption, as you mentioned. But there's a lot of stuff that you were going through, and also that healing there's simple steps, but sometimes not always so simple, but just getting out of bed. But that it takes,
Amen.
especially emotional healing, takes some time. It takes step by step, and there's processes. Although, yes, like you said, there could be a miracle, but often there's a process.
Mhm.
And a lot of people out there may be in that, as you even said, your relationship with God, your relationship with yourself, your relationship with other people has evolved and changed over time. So thank you so much for sharing about all of that. And then you decided to write your story,
Yes.
and you talked about some of your process leading up to that, but what were some of the things leading up to you making that decision to say, yes, I'm writing this story for other people?
Yeah, it was an act of obedience. And I just kept feeling like a tug at my heart that all of the things that the Lord has brought me through, and I've been able to find my voice. And just knowing from groups I've been in, and the club I worked at and things, that there's so many out there suffering who have yet to find their voice. So to me, it was after the healing came, it was so important to really just share so openly and honestly, so someone else could maybe say, me too, and be inspired to start taking their steps towards healing, because that's what it's all about.
Mhm. Yeah, that's great. So just that yes, and then obedience, knowing that as you process your story, as you're healing, there's a time where you could share it and feel that healing in yourself, and then knowing that it'll help other people. That's great. And if you could share, perhaps maybe show your story again, maybe show your book, as if there's any highlights or any part of it, or any, even the back or whatever you'd like to read, to perhaps so the readers can get just a little taste of what your book's about. I don't know if there's a place that you feel led to read from. Sometimes there's the back of the book, there's just beginning, but if you can share a little taste of your book.
Okay, I'll read the back because I have not read the back out loud yet. So
Okay.
I was dying on the inside, and my life was spiraling out of control. The emotional pain was so unbearable at times. I began to leave suicide notes out, hoping someone would find them and save me. Sexually abused at a young age, this dark hidden secret inside began to take its toll. Tiffany Brearton's, that's me, childhood trauma led her into a dark and disturbing road. Hoping to escape her life, she grasped at the only worth she could find in herself, her body. She believed she could find value and happiness in being a stripper, so she grabbed a phone book and found the closest strip club. Tiffany's incredible journey took her deeper into a life of immense disappointment, pain, and sorrow as she endlessly looked for the hope and real love she knew was somewhere out there, which she eventually found took her from stilettos to grace.
How'd that feel reading it for the first time?
It was good. Yeah.
Good.
It's so
Yeah.
weird when you read something quietly to yourself, and it's so nice to read things out loud. I feel like
Yeah,
it's more impactful. Yeah.
it is powerful. Yeah. So Tiffany, thank you so much for your time here, sharing your story. writing this book that I honor you for many women and audiences, even men, different people who are drawn to read this book, that they may get that breakthrough and understanding of the possibility of that healing process, and how your relationships changed as you changed, and in your relationship with the Lord. And so the final part is any encouragement that you may have out there for women or people that may be in different stages of where you once were. What would that encouraging message be?
Yes, and I'll just end where we began. And it's as simple as your title. Take the next step. And whatever that looks like for you. One of my first steps towards healing was looking up a sexual abuse counselor.
Mm-hmm.
And that took me days and weeks to even open up and research that information. And then the next step was making a phone call. So just encourage you that God will meet you in every step you take, and every step is just a step closer to your healing. So it is worth it. And it is as simple as that. There is heartache and pain along the way, but if you can just keep taking a step, you're going to make it through, and it's going to be okay.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Tiffany. Again, audience, if you're looking for Tiffany's book, I will have the link on the YouTube page, the podcast, and on the Facebook page. So you want to go out and get the book. And if you have any questions for Tiffany, please write them below in the comments, or write them, and we'll make sure that she gets them and she can answer them. So certainly it's been a pleasure, Tiffany. Thank you for being on here. And audience, we care about you. So as always, remember, you are loved, you are valued, and you're worthy at all times, no matter what. And hopefully I'll see you next week tuning in to our Traumaplicity podcast once again. Thanks again, Tiffany. Bye, everybody.
Thank you, Amanda.